Will and Harper stars share powerful insight in trans allyship coming out. The documentaries of the year, Will and Harper, has debuted on Netflix. The documentary follows a longtime friends, Will Ferrell and Harper Steele, who met when they started working at SNL same week 30 years ago. When Harper came out as trans, the two decided to go on a cross-country road trip to reconnect each other and the country's out. Raffy Ermac spoke with the cast and crew about the film, how to be a good trans ally and good gay icon. The star and director of the documentary were presented on the red carpet during the Los Angeles premiere, playing a fun game of Out of the Bag, where celebrities draw questions from a designer purse. Harper Steele pulled a question about queer icons and suggested her good friend Will Ferrell then answered what advice he had to give to young trans folks and hesitant to come out. Quoted, he said, "Everyone has a different set of circumstances and a different level of support. But I would just say this. If I can muster up the courage, and you will feel such joy, and it will change your lives in so many different ways, beyond what you can even imagine." End quote. Director Josh Greenbaum emphasized the allyship, saying, quote, "Showing up to be there, listening." He also named Harper Steele as a deserving gay icon. Will and Harper is now streaming on Netflix. I'm looking forward to watching this thing actually tonight, and I seen a clip of the interview and stuff like that. It seems really touching, and it's gonna bring transgenderism to a new group of demographic of guys or people that we look at and say, oh, they're transphobic or anything like that. So the bro culture, bro stuff that has to be confronted with, hey, trans is everywhere. We're everywhere. We're your best friends. And I personally experienced that many times in the bike community. My best friend Dave, we worked at Performance Bike from a long time ago, but it was from now I'm thinking about 15 years ago. He was there when I just started transitioning. And Dave if you see Dave, he's a big old redneck, got beard. He almost voted for Trump on 2015. I can put him out there. He's not that. Okay. But I'm just trying to say to you, going back to all the other things, there's not too much of a difference. So there's more similarities with each other than differences. And it looks pretty touching. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Well, I mean, it's gotten a lot of buzz. So let me say that my initial thought and what I feel now are different, okay? So my initial thought was they didn't get the pronouns right. He kept on calling her a he, and that was really upsetting me. He didn't know the terminology. Will Ferrell knows nothing about the trans community. These are all things that I was like, why wouldn't they wait a couple of weeks to get him up to par and then start filming? Well, I found out that they wanted to get this out before election. So they were a little rushed for it, right? But then the more I sat with it, the more I was happy that they did it this way, right? We make mistakes when people learn about the trans community, they misdo pronouns, they misspeak, right? If you're able to learn from your mistakes, right, and then not do it again, then I'm with you, right? And this is Will Ferrell going through the evolution of understanding that his friend was trans all along and that he didn't know, you know?
But people being allyship, I'm using my dad, for example. My dad, he still has a hard time saying she, her, but he makes an attempt.
Yes.
And when people make an attempt, I give him grace. Exactly. I'm not going to be and stuff like that. So I didn't see the movie yet, and things like the documentary, but I've been personally where people who have been trying to understand, and they're mispronouncing pronouns. Some people get sensitive, but you have to understand if they're coming over a good attempt to understand, I'll let that go, let that grace.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but I do love how outspoken Will Ferrell has been about the documentary, doing lots of press, and it doesn't hurt that he does have that kind of fan base that would benefit from the movie's strong message of unconditional acceptance. So thank you, Will, for doing that.
Will Ferrell has a platform.
Oh, huge.
He has a huge platform, okay? I saw him on Broadway do Bush. right? When he was doing the president everywhere, right? This is, one of the many things. And he is very white America also, right? So, I am not a trans woman. I can't speak on the trans experience. We are blessed to have Carvel here to be able to do that, right? This does, like Carvel says, this brings this to another audience that maybe would become transphobic because of lack of knowledge. Because that's what happens to many people.
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
And then just showing that any new information, new documentary. Yes, Will Ferrell is using his platform and using it in the correct way by, hey, look, here's my best friend, and how many people can relate that story too. So there's a win-win with this too, and bringing more conversations to people that you wouldn't even think they want to talk about that or feel uncomfortable talking about. Yeah,
completely. And again, education is key. Education is key. I read a story today that Will Ferrell regrets some of the stuff that they filmed. Right? They filmed a part in a Texas steakhouse.
Yes.
Where he was dressed like Sherlock Holmes. Okay, because Will Ferrell is still Will Ferrell, right?
Clown, right?
And there was a moment there where they worried about the girl's safety, right? And that was something that Will had never thought about until he's in the middle of a Texas steakhouse in the middle of Texas, where she stands up and says, "I wish you people would do more for trans rights." And the whole entire room went silent. And then one woman stood up and said, "Oh, but we still love you." Still. Like you're giving me a pass, right? And Will learned from that.
Yeah.
I saw the documentary.
Oh, okay.
And it spoke to me because I don't have a friend who's transitioned, so I can't speak on that. But I've had somebody in my life who I've known for over 40 years that recently told me that they're coming out. And so as someone who has had a relationship with this person for well over 5 decades, I understood where Will was coming from in terms of Harper's transitioning, because they've known each other for 30 years. They've acted a certain way, like I have with my best friend. And now they're telling me something more about themselves that, my friend doesn't change so much, but, Will feels, in the documentary that, a lot is changing for Harper. And so it's a little clumsy in the beginning. And I think that's the grace that I think the documentary gives.
I love
is that because when Will sees Harper for the first time after the pandemic, it's kind of like, where do we go from here? And I've only known you as Andrew Steele, but now you're Harper Steele. And how do we have a relationship?
How do we transition?
Yeah. How do we have a relationship?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what this whole road trip was about. How do you explore and how do you get to know the new person and still value them and still want them in your life? So, it was beautiful, I thought.
Wow.
And, and I cried a little bit too, because you did get to see the injustices, and you did get to see the story that you told about the Texas steakhouse, because you just don't think about it all the time until you afterwards, and you're like, oh, that was such a horrible mistake.
Yeah.
And he admits that too.
He does.
So it's a learning process.
It's a learning process, and it's a growing curve, and it's beautiful to see it, to be able to see it on screen, right? So again, like my initial thought of it's clumsy, he's misgendering her, like I was all mad for her, right?
Yeah.
But then once I sat with that and the representation of it all and the education of it all and the clumsiness of it all, then I appreciate it even more.
Because Will's coming at it, he wants to learn.
Yeah.
And he wants to embrace this new person, but doesn't know how to do it.
But the thing is, it's not a new person. It's the same person.
That's what he thinks. But that's his mentality.
In the context of that, it's new to that person. Even if they can be like, so having like Will Ferrell taking, like he had the choice of not ending that friendship too, because I had people who I don't talk to anymore, and
that had an issue with transitioning.
So having your best friend staying in there and want to understand, it's a beautiful thing, and then having it being filmed. So like I said, I'm excited to watch this. So it sounds good with the clips you guys are describing. So.
Yeah, so we're all going to be watching it tonight.
Yes,
You'll be seeing the comments on social media.
Yeah, exactly.